pretty high. Our heads are almost in the clouds, and their feet are chained to the ground with their chains of misery. They've got a hold of me. They won't let go of me. Let go of me. They might have gravity on their side, but something's pulling us high. Got the potential to fly. Don't let them be what holds you back from this one incredible chance. They're lucky to have had a glance at you. While you defy gravity, they can be cruel and mean and a huge pain. Our heads are in the clouds now. Don't let them make it rain. A smile can be the sun they're missing out on their rainy day. They might have gravity on their side, but something's pulling us high. Got the potential to fly. Don't let them be what holds you back from this one incredible chance. They're lucky to have had a glance at you while you defy gravity. You defy gravity. They say we aren't strong enough. We don't have what it takes. I say yeah, they're wrong enough, and we'll show them someday. They might have gravity on their side, but something's pulling us high. Got the potential to fly. Oh yeah, don't let them be what holds you back from this one incredible chance. They're lucky to have had a glance at you while you defy gravity. You defy gravity. You defy gravity. Yeah, yeah. At you while you defy gravity.
Good evening, everybody, and we are joined by Paul on the plane to talk about the simulated moon missions. Paul, are you there?
I am here. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well, thank you. You are, and always have been, one of my favourite flat earthers, so it's an absolute privilege to have you on tonight.
Well, I'm honored. No, I appreciate the opportunity, and yeah, I'd love to show you guys, for those that maybe haven't seen some of the stuff that has appeared on my channel and some of the stuff I've been working on, to see what we found and draw their own conclusions. So appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, Paul, would you like to tell the audience who you are, what different shows you have?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. So yeah, I go by Paul on the Plane online. I've got a weekly live radio show called Paul on the Plane Live. It's on Truth Frequency Radio. That's every Tuesday night here in the U.S., 5 o'clock Pacific time, 8 o'clock Eastern. That ends up being about 1 a.m., I think, Wednesday morning for those of you in the UK there. And then I also have a podcast. And oh, by the way, my co-host just recently joined the team. My co-host over there at Truth Frequency Radio is none other than the lovely and talented and passionate Roxanne, the Globalist Denier. So I'm just tickled to have her on board with the show going forward. So that's Tuesday nights. And then I've got a podcast that comes out weekly. And that is with a kind of a collaboration with Mitchell from Australia. So we kind of feel we got the plane covered, me here in the States and him over there in Australia. So we do a weekly podcast as well. And all my body of work pretty much can be found on my website, and that's potp.net, which stands for Paul on the Plane. And that's pretty much it, I guess.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, now that you've introduced yourself to the audience, because I'm sure there's going to be several globe earthers in, I can already see some in the chat, so maybe they've seen this kind of stuff before, maybe they haven't, but I'm sure that a lot of the flat earthers already know a bit of your work, and let's hope that this presentation goes as well as I hope it is. Are you ready to present?
Yeah, let's get going.
Okie dokie, right. The floor is yours.
All right. So we decided to kind of entitle this presentation "The Simulated Moon Missions," and the reason is that based on the photographs and really examining those, and I want to give a shout out to my partner in crime, Scott Henderson, who's really the brains behind a lot of this research and the production. He's the one that has spent 10,000 hours over 10 plus years examining pretty much everything NASA has ever made public. And once the high res photos came out from all of the moon landings, really dived in there and looked at the detail and was able to see some things that I think that had not been seen before. So we go over a lot of that stuff and put videos together, and it's been, I'd say, pretty well received. So the reason that we, again, kind of come in full circle here to what I was talking about with the title, the simulated moon missions, what we're finding is when you dive into and you start looking at the details and you start trying to reconcile, what we're told and what we see in these photos, what we're finding is that it appears that, like before any big performance, you do dress rehearsals. So, before the astronauts were due to launch from Florida to, into orbit and then on to the moon and do their missions, they did simulations. And they, it was a full dress rehearsal. They had their spacesuits on, they had their cameras working, and they went through and did things, the checklists and everything that they had that they were planning to do, right? That's what you would do. You would, go through everything and, be ready for, to go through every step of the mission. Well, what we're finding is when we go back and really examine these photos and videos and things of that nature, we're finding what the world was shown and told was real was the simulations. It was the photographs that were taken here on Earth during the simulation and videos that were taken here on Earth from the simulations. And that's what this presentation is. Hope will get people to maybe take a second look at some of these photos and say, that's interesting, So that's where I wanted to start. And the kind of the overall theme to this presentation is going to be, I think what we're shown was the simulations. That's what we were shown. So let's dive into this, and we'll show you what we found. And obviously the conclusion is left up to those that are examining it. And I'd be happy to send this presentation to anybody afterwards that would like to spend more time looking at the photos and magnifying them and looking even closer and studying them. I'd be happy to send this presentation to them. All of these photos come from NASA. They're all in the different magazines from the different missions, and you can go online and find them yourself. So let's go ahead and get started. If I can hit the next slide here. There we go. All right. This first section I call Accidents Happen. So in examining the photos, this is from Apollo 15. And we're going to start there because what it appears is that during the shooting of the simulation, the lunar module being lowered by a crane or some sort of whatever they were doing to kind of move the lunar module up and down. The last few feet before it was due to kind of touch the ground, it appears it broke from its, from whatever it was hanging from, because it fell the last few feet and caused quite a bit of damage to the lunar module. Now, when you go and look at the transcripts and from the mission, you don't have any mention of, oh yeah, we crash landed, or we landed really hard, or we broke this or broke that. But when you examine the photos from Apollo 15, you're going to find that there was quite a bit of damage. So there was an accident. And that's what these photographs are going to, I think, are going to illustrate. So I'm going to go over to this first one, and these are from, again, Apollo 15. And interestingly, Apollo 15 was the only mission of the 6 that landed on the moon successfully, where we don't have photographs and video of the 2 astronauts emerging from the lunar module. Okay. Typically, in the other missions, the 2 astronauts would come on the lunar module, they would plant the flag, and they would, have the ceremony, and that's the first thing that they did. Well, Apollo 15 was different. They didn't do that. In fact, what we got were a couple of EVAs and SEVAs first, and then they kind of came back, again, looking at the magazine and the order the photos were taken. Then they came back and did the flag ceremony and the salute and all that sort of thing. Well, you examine the photos, the first photos that we get from Apollo 15, we see damage, okay? And so the photo that you have on your screen now, you can see closely that the secondary struts, where these arrows are pointing, appear to have been broken off, and the ball swivel joints had to be replaced. And you could see these parts that are laying on the ground, okay? Again, no mention of any damage or any structural anything. This is just what the photos are showing. And again, what was interesting was that these were the first photos instead of the flag being planted and the salute and that whole ceremony. So you can kind of see that there were some parts here, and it looks like these swivel joints were actually replaced. Okay? Now we go to the next image. All right, we're going to see what's very interesting is what appears to be 2 damaged PLSSs, and that stands for the Personal Life Support System, on the ground. These are the backpacks that the astronauts would wear. Okay, what's interesting is that we are told that only 2 PLSSs were supplied for each mission, 1 for each astronaut. There was no extras. There was no redundancy for that. But what's interesting in this photo is you can see that there are 2 there laying on the ground. And we've got an astronaut in the background, and we've got obviously an astronaut taking the photograph, for a total of 4. All right. Also, this photo, we've got, if you look closely, the main strut there is not centered on the landing pad, okay, which in the other missions you can see that it is. This was damaged, okay, and the ball joint has been broken, and it just seems to have been left there between simulations. And we're going to get into more of the damage here as we examine these photos a little bit closer. But real quickly on the PLSSs, the Personal Life Support Systems, okay, we are told that there are 1 for each astronaut. Well, here's a snippet from the video that we all would see that we were shown of the astronauts coming out of the little van, and they would head towards the Saturn V rocket to go up in the elevator, and they were always wearing their spacesuits, right? Well, then why are we also showing these photos where you've got the 2 spacesuits always packed in the lunar module, ready to go for when they got into the lunar module and got ready to descend to the moon? So when we're told that there's only 2 supplied, why are they wearing them when they enter the rocket? But they also were shown that they were already pre-packed in the lunar module. Just questions, just stuff that doesn't seem to add up. All right, back to the damage. All right, this is again from Apollo 15. If you look closely there, you can see I forgot what it's called now. Gosh, my mind is I had a brain fart here. The exhaust cone there at the bottom. I forgot what it's called for some reason. My mind's a blank. Anyway, you can see there where the arrows are pointing. You can see it's been crushed. Okay, you can see that there's definitely a dent, an indentation and evidence that it landed kind of abruptly or hard and damaged the exhaust there. I think it's called the bell housing or something like that. And even more importantly is looking in the foreground of the photo, you have what is known as the mounts for the rover. Okay, so Apollo 15 was the first mission that had a rover, a lunar rover. The four-wheel little dune buggy, and so and maybe that had something to do with it because now the machine that they were simulating, the landing of was heavier, and maybe the straps broke. But obviously, what happened when it landed is we had the rover breaking off from its mounts, and you can see there the lowering arms. They're on the ground. They are flat out just broken, and the ropes that are hanging there. And the damage, as we'll see, it continued through for the lunar. When Apollo 15, when its crash occurred, if you want to call it that, or when it was dropped, what it appears is that when the rover broke off, the rover ended up getting pretty damaged too. Okay, so when you go into 16 and 17, you'll see that the rover continued to have problems. Okay, it was damaged in this accident and throughout the simulations. Also worthy of note is looking at the mold on the jettison bag, which is in the background there, near the bell housing. You can see that there's what appears to be mold or mildew on it. Now, these things are prepared in a clean room. We're going to go over that a lot when we start talking about some of the other evidence in the photos. This should all be perfectly clean. One of the first things, if not the first thing that the astronauts do, we were told when they land on the moon, is they toss out the jettison bag. This is what's full of their urine and feces and waste. Okay, why is there mold or mildew or something on that? It's very, very interesting. All right. Moving on. Now, this is the famous photo that we got of the hammer and feather. All right. So this is very famous. They demonstrated the hammer and the feather falling at the same rate, in limited gravity there, whatever. And that's the whole story that we get. Well, I thought it was very interesting that also in this photo, you have what appears to be a broken lifting strap from Apollo 15. Okay. And what we start kind of getting a feeling of as we go through these photos is that perhaps there was a little bit of whistleblowing going on. That the astronauts, knowing by now in 15, if they didn't know earlier, that they were taking pictures and this stuff was going to be passed off as or used as what really happened on the moon. Well, it appears maybe that they were being a little bit liberal in what they took pictures of and leaving little clues. And we're going to be covering that a little bit more as we go along here. But here you have a broken lifting strap, something torn anyway, on the ground around the Apollo 15 lunar module. All right, as we continue on with the rover now, when you examine all of the photos for Apollo 17, you're going to find that there's 3 different rovers, which is very interesting because there should only been one, right? Well, there's 3 different designs, mainly in the rear fenders. That's what identifies them. So here you have, let's see, I'm looking at my notes here. These are all, again, from Apollo 17. These are all from magazine, one from a magazine 137, one from magazine 143, and one from magazine 147. All of the fenders are a little bit different, okay? What it appears as you go through these is you'll find that the rover started having problems. They started having to repair them. And so they look a little bit different in a lot of the photos. Now, again, there's no evidence, there's no transcripts that there were working on the rover that was breaking down or anything like that, but we're seeing in the photographic evidence that there was potentially problems with the rover, and they had to continue to work on these things and repair them. All right, 3 different tire tracks found in Apollo 17 also give this away. Why are the tire tracks very different? Okay, this was supposed to be the same dune buggy. Well, why do we have 3 different tire tracks? There's no evidence of them changing tires. They didn't get a flat and have to change a tire or something like that. The upper images on your screen here are of the lower frame rails of the Apollo 17 rovers, and they are all very different in design, just in front of the right rear wheel. Now, again, don't have a lot of time to allow this to be on the screen, but happy to send this PowerPoint presentation to anybody that would like to see it and study these for yourselves. But as you dive into the details here, you start seeing that there are differences in these rovers, all from the same mission. All right. So what the conclusion that we've kind of drawn here, especially Scott Henderson, who's uncovered a lot of this stuff, is that the Apollo 15, 16, and 17 missions all use the same rover. Okay. And another big piece of evidence is that there's an oil leak. And it's in the left rear, I think it's, the left rear axle. And it gets worse and worse as each mission went along. You can see in the bottom left there, that's from 15, and the middle one's from 16, and the last one's from 17. And it got so bad, they're actually throwing oil when you get to 17. The axle was leaking oil. Again, this was dropped, broke off of its mounts when the accident happened with 15. Okay. The fenders and the steering are some of the more notable pieces, and it just continued to break down during filming. And if you count the total number of rovers, again, we found 3 different rovers in 17 and 2 different rovers in 16, and they can all be, again, identified by comparing the frame rails and the tire tracks. And this is the second rover in Apollo 16. And it appears that it was only used for this photo opportunity, which was the jump salute by the astronaut. And it's pretty distinctive. It's the only rover to have the front left fender with the double rib. So again, you're looking at the original photo on the left, but if you magnify it, which is what these high-res photographs have allowed us to do, we start noticing these differences. So this is the only rover with the a double rib on the fender. Okay. Any other pictures of a rover from all of the missions have a single rib fender, which like the right front fender in this photo. Okay. Only one picture of this rover with that one fender. All the other ones are different. All right. I'm going to switch gear to a section I call Lights, Camera, Action. And what you're going to see now are the what are called cuff checklists, and these were the little booklets that were attached to the cuffs of the astronaut spacesuits, and it basically tells them what they're supposed to do. These are kind of like cue cards, if you will. So if they have their helmets on, and they have their mission in front of them. But what's really interesting here, especially these Apollo 16 cuff checklists here in this image. Keep in mind that these are prepared sometimes up to months in advance, okay? But what's interesting is when you go through these things, there's things in here that would be impossible for NASA to know in advance of the astronauts being in these locations. How could NASA know the size, the shape, or exact location of a rock, the exact time that the astronauts would arrive at it? The camera settings that would need to be used, the position where the sun would be, where the footprints. Oops, sorry, I just skipped ahead there. Where the footprints would be. I mean, come on. There's a disturbed area that they have to walk around. How would NASA know the mineral contents of the inside of a rock before it's even split open? On the lower left, here you can see the note, all set photos taken at, which is past tense. So essentially these checklists are storyboards, if you will, or cue cards used for filming the scene. The astronauts, when wearing the suits, they couldn't hear instructions from the film crew or whatever yelling or whatever, would restrict their vision. So the cuff checklists were used in Apollo 12 through 17. Apollo 11 didn't have these. I really like the one on the bottom right here. EO, it stands for enthusiastic observations. I mean, they're not even telling them what to do. They're basically telling them what to do with their, body language. Okay, interesting, very interesting stuff. Now, of all the checklists, this one I thought was really interesting. Again, this isn't the exhaustive body of work here. These are just some of the highlights that Scott and I have put together. Here's the Apollo 17 checklist. Impossible details, in my opinion. Locating 4 craters to drive through and around. This is a very well-staged scene. One astronaut operating two cameras and taking photos at the same time. And then what's this note here of on the right here of Jones? Okay, you see the name Jones there? Well, he's the inspector of the filming. Okay, when we go to the next slide here, you're going to see that his name is on the color plate. Okay, so Jones is the inspector for the filming, but why is his location of where he is standing clearly marked? What is he doing on the moon? Why does he need to be in the checklist? Sorry, I had to take a quick drink there. All right, so these are the color plates. At the beginning of every set of photographs, videos from each of the missions, you see these color plates. And those of you maybe a little bit older would know what these color plates are for, and that is they do these at the beginning of the reel so that you can adjust your monitor or TV screen or whatever to make sure you have the right colors, the right settings. But what's very interesting here is this is Apollo 17, right? This is the date of the video was November 28th, 1972 for Apollo 17. You can see Inspector Jones is there. Does anybody in the chat listening know what the launch date of Apollo 17 happens to be? It was about a week later. Let that sink in. What you find when you go look at all of these color plates is that the dates of the video and the photographs were about a week, sometimes a little bit more, prior to launch. But they are shown to us as if they were taken on the moon. The dates are right there, ladies and gentlemen. These are NASA photos. All right. So, two different camera angles here. We're going to continue to talk about this being kind of like a scene, okay, or the simulations being used. No TV camera is visible here, but the scene seems to have been shot multiple times with very different lighting effects. Now, let me elaborate. Neil Armstrong, who's taking this picture, all right, on the left. This is Buzz Aldrin that is coming down the ladder for the first time. Just Neil's already stepped foot on the moon. Buzz is coming down the ladder. Neil is taking the picture. And you can see that Neil Armstrong, where he's positioned, okay? Now, on the right is the TV camera feed that the world saw, okay? And Neil is, well, he's way behind the ladder and Buzz is coming down, okay? But Neil Armstrong, based on the positioning here, should be, in my opinion, almost center of this live TV picture to be able to take the photo on the left. So this is evidence that this is kind of a stage scene, had to be taken more than once. This image was taken from the restored Apollo 11 video uploaded to YouTube by NASA. Now, here's some of the shadows. These are from Apollo 14. This is what can happen when you give a disgruntled employee a camera. They're likely to take a few shots before all the lighting has been adjusted. A double shadow of this size, especially look at the one on the left there, would take some very powerful lighting. Now, when you go back and see, especially, I believe it's Apollo 15 or 16, I can't remember now, looking at one of the videos, they actually showed both takes that they did because the flag was moved to a different position. You can look at that. I believe that is season 2, episode 11, I'm guessing, but I'll have to get back to you on that. Don't quote me. Go to fakingspace.net. It'll redirect to my Faking Space series, and you can see that where they kind of pan over to, they start to the left. You can see the double shadow. They pan to the right, and then it cuts, and then they pan back, or then when the video comes back, they're back to the original spot, and the double shadow has been removed, and then they pan over again, and you can see the flag's been moved. So obviously they shot it twice. And for some reason, the video that they did not mean to be in there was in there. Stuff like that. Again, the devil's in the details. You got to go and watch this stuff. And here is Apollo 11. The photo on the left shows the position of the flag, as seen through a series of photos taken after both astronauts were back on board before takeoff. On the right is an image taken from the video just before takeoff, and the flag has been moved to make sure it was in what appears to be in full sunlight for all of everyone to see. I mean, the American flag, of course, is the focal point of the photo. So how did the flag move there? Okay, these photos and videos were taken after both astronauts, Neil and Buzz, have entered the lunar module for the last time and are getting ready to take off. But we've got video and photos that kind of contradict themselves, and the flag has been changed. Multiple scenes are used here, guys. All right. Spaceship blown. This is Apollo 16, and I've got a little video embedded in the PowerPoint here. So let's watch this and tell me what you guys think. Watch the panels on the top of the lunar module there when blastoff occurs. And in slow motion. And here's a close-up. This is Apollo 16. And then these are the pictures we got with the lunar module going to rendezvous with the command module, command and service module. Looks pretty crumpled up there. That didn't go well, did it? You ever wonder what was behind those sheets of aluminum? Oh, nothing important. Just a bunch of electronics and probably essential systems that would keep this thing from keep this thing working. Very, very, very large explosion that took place and damaged the craft, and that's what was going on. But what I found was most interesting, and kind of providing evidence that the same props were used, the same stage, the same set was used for each of these missions, is when you compare the Apollo 16 and the Apollo 17 lunar modules side by side. Apollo 16 on the left, before the explosion, and you saw which panels were damaged. Look at Apollo 17. Isn't it interesting that it's those four are a slightly different color? Those were just replaced for the next mission. They were just fixed. You guys decide. That's what I see. All right, let's get to what I call outdoor life. Now, this, when I hear people talk about the moon landings and they say, it was shot in a Hollywood basement, it was shot on a movie set, whatever. Maybe some of it was, and I think the miniatures that were used for stop motion for the lunar module and flying around and docking with the command module, all that stuff, that might have been done in a studio. But when it comes to a majority of the photographs with the astronauts walking around, driving around, and that sort of thing, I think that was all shot outside, and here's why. Here is a piece of equipment where I think its condition is unmistakable. This is from Apollo 12. So I think what these photos are showing is that this equipment was not only used over and over again for each of the missions, but it was just left outside. It was just continued to get weathered, and that's why they had problems with things breaking down and things becoming discolored and things like that. This piece of equipment looks like it's just been left outside in the weather and has mold or mildew on it. Now, NASA claims, again, that their equipment was prepared in a clean room before it was placed on the rocket just before launch. How can the equipment show up like this when they're on the moon? Okay, here's photos from Apollo 12 on the left and Apollo 14. You can see the amount of the difference in the equipment being left outside to weather. What happens to it? They're using the same props over and over again, and they're just getting into really bad shape that it has to be replaced. All the experimental package here, this is what this is called, the experimental package. It ages over time from one mission to the next. On the left, if you look closely, and again, I'll send this PowerPoint to anybody that wants to see it, and you can magnify the photos and look for yourself. On the left, you could see standing water and mud that is left after the water has evaporated. And the mud is sitting there just stuck to it. Just like you would see if something that's muddy, wet and muddy, and then when the sun bakes it and the water evaporates, you've got this crusty, dirty mess. Well, that's what's left on some of this equipment. On the right, the cracks are visible, and the plastic is kind of curling up around the top of the equipment here. Okay, this stuff is aging and being weathered, like you would see it if you left stuff out in your yard, or out in the garden for a long period of time. This is from Apollo 12. If you look really closely here, this is what's called the Surveyor, this piece of equipment. It looks like it's some quickly put together prop. This is really funny to me. The solar array at the top there looks like it's just a wooden board, and the two sides are not even the same. And if you look closely on the back of the solar array there, looks like they ripped off a piece of an old desk from back in grade school. You can see the glue there or the discoloration where it was attached to the rest of the desk. I mean, this was just hastily put together. In the lower right, you could see standing water on the equipment itself, and the little pieces of the equipment there are kind of peeling back as they're aging and becoming either probably discolored and with the changing heat and the cold and the moisture and all that over time is just ruining this equipment. NASA claims this photo here, this is from Apollo 12, was taken in space during an undocking procedure. And you can clearly see that there is water drying from the panel. It got wet and has been slowly drying from the aluminum here or sheet metal or whatever that's used. Just some stuff to look at. This one is really interesting. This is a window that appears to have blown out, best as we can tell, like from a pressure test or something like that. It was taped back. Okay, there's actual tape on this window on the outside, and the rain guard has been completely broken off. And it looks like they were installed the rain guard. If you want to, why would they need a rain guard first of all? But it was installed to try and keep the water out. You can see that, again, this photo was claimed to be taken halfway to the moon, and water is running down the window in zero gravity and is in between the layers of glass, which means that obviously there was a seal that was broken, and why is the water freezing on the glass, even though it's minus 250 degrees or whatever outside? So, got some questions there. Just some stuff to think about. Okay. This is from Apollo 14. The astronauts intentionally, this is in our opinion, removed the foil, the front of this equipment, to show you that there's actually nothing inside. This is a prop that was just left outside, and it appears to just kind of age over time. The mud on the bottom left there, the mud is just stuck to the rail long enough, and it's even, if you look closely, I think you can even see evidence of rust. Okay, I think this is called the central station or something like that. That was this experimental equipment or whatever. It was supposed to be packed full of stuff to it was supposed to be packed full to receive info from the experiments and then send it back to Earth. I believe that's something of what the equipment was supposed to be used for. But again, look closely at it, and does this look like something that was prepared in a clean room and then deployed on the moon for the first time? Not in this condition. Okay, now I've brightened this photo up, and this kind of goes back to the Apollo 15 accident. You can see from the Apollo 15 accident on the left there, I've brightened it up so you can see that the the damage on the top left there, you can see that's where the exhaust bell housing was damaged when the Apollo 15 simulation accident occurred. The photo on the right is from Apollo 17, and where the arrow is pointing, you can see that they're the same indentation in the same spot. These photos were chosen because they were taken from almost the same angle, and you've got the same damage from the Apollo 17 exhaust bell housing as you do from the Apollo 15 one. So the damage wasn't really repaired. It was just kind of, they lifted it back up off the ground so that it wasn't rusting on the ground anymore after the accident. And then I would be remiss if I didn't include this. This is from Apollo 17, very famous photo with the astronaut on the left there, but we've cropped that out because we wanted to focus on the flag. And in my opinion, this is a very convincing showstopper, I think, to anybody that's willing to look at all of this evidence with an open mind. This flag is wet, and it's been drying back from the edges. It's also clear this is an authentic flag. This is not made of aluminum. This is a nylon or whatever that synthetic material is that was used. This flag got wet and has been drying, and I think the magnification of these high-res photos shows that. You can even see in parts of the red where there's some wet spots, not just only in the blue around the stars. All right, so this kind of goes to the question. There's a couple of fun photos here that we analyzed where you can start to question, do you think that maybe these astronauts were intentionally, subtly leaving clues? That's a whole different conversation. Whole different show would be about the psychology of what the astronauts were going through, something they trained for, and then once they figured out that they weren't going and that these would be used to and passed off as shot on the moon, but these were all this was all happening during simulation. So here's one for you. This is from Apollo 15, and the grasping tongs here I think have been carefully placed so that the tongs shadow is making an arrow. And what the arrow is pointing at, if you look closely there, is a white glove with rubber tips at the end of the arrow. And to the left of that glove are many more gloves with the fingers sticking straight out of this pile of dirt. And I think the astronauts maybe had some fun kind of staging this. Again, you decide. I'll send you this. You can decide. So what's this object in the photo here? All right. When you zoom in on the photo, you can see how small it is on the left side. But if you zoom in there, this doesn't look like something that would be naturally occurring on the moon. All right. It's shiny, seems to be almost metallic in nature, has some different colors that we maybe haven't seen before. It looks a lot like a Labatt beer can, which was very popular in the late 1960s, early 1970s. Okay. The crews that worked on the sets and the astronauts themselves potentially are the whistleblowers here. This is a very close match, again, to this beer can label. Anything that contains liquid or any other object that's not brought by the astronauts that appear in the photos, I think were placed there to expose the fraud. You've heard of the Sea Rock. Did you guys know that there was a rock that said GC? Well, now you do. This is, let's see, which one is this from? I don't have it in my notes here. I'll have to get back to you. So NASA tried to get rid of the Sea Rock, if you guys aren't aware of that whole story, where there was a Sea Rock and then it was removed from the photos, photoshopped, maybe airbrushed out, whatever. Well, you can find the Sea Rock in multiple missions if you go and know where to look for it. Scott found a rock that says GC. So who knows what that might stand for? But again, we've got props. And then we got the pressure problem, which I'll go through real quickly. This was one of the latest Faking Space videos that we produced, having to do with the spacesuits and the lunar module themselves being able to withstand the pressure differential on the outside of the spacesuit, the outside of the lunar module when on the moon, versus what was going on the inside. We're told that the different levels of vacuums are low, high, and ultra high, depending on the pressure differential and the lack of air pressure. We're told that the ultra high vacuum is 10 to the negative 9 to 10 to the negative 12 torr. Even the high vacuum is 10 to the negative 3 to 10 to the negative 9 torr. This is 0.0000002 psi, 99% vacuum. All right. The only problem is when we look at here on Earth, what kind of equipment is needed to maintain that level of air pressure or lack thereof are these seals that are made of metal and are one-time use materials. This is what's needed to seal in high and ultra-high vacuum areas. And we're told the moon was ultra-high vacuum, okay? But on the right is the helmet seal of the Apollo missions. And the problem is that how these things connect to the suit was just a latch that fits into the groove for like an easy installation, a quick connection on and off. It doesn't have the capability to compress the seal and would not function even in a low vacuum. And the gloves have a similar type of an easy connection. The surfaces must be clean. Again, for really to be able to seal in high and ultra high, the seals have to be extremely clean, free of all foreign materials to be able to work. The Apollo astronauts, using the same suits covered in dirt for 3 EVAs, it would be impossible for the suits to work and reseal each time. And the same is true for the hatch on the lunar module, as they had to crawl through that hatch, multiple times, dragging dust and dirt with them. And if you look at a lot of the photographs, they're covered in dust and dirt and what looks like mud that's actually dried on them. The door seals wouldn't even be functional. The lunar module could not even be pressurized after re-entry, if this were all the case. And I'm going to skip through this because I think we're kind of running out of time and I want to get to Q&A. Here's the largest and most powerful vacuum chamber. It's in Ohio. It's owned by NASA. It opened about 3 months after Apollo 11 launched, and they are able to get down to 10 to the negative 6 torr. And it takes 6 feet of concrete, reinforced steel, so they don't suck any air, any concrete dust into the chamber to be able to maintain that level of low air pressure inside. But I tell you guys, if you think that the spacesuit and the lunar module are stronger than this building, because they have to withstand 10 to the negative 11 torr, which would be orders of magnitude, hundreds of thousands of times stronger. If you think that those, the spacesuit and the lunar module are stronger than this vacuum chamber with 6-foot concrete walls and reinforced steel, then you've been successfully indoctrinated, in my opinion. Okay. Okay, great. Thanks. Well, that was pretty much it. I just wanted to let people know. I didn't know how many questions were going to come in, but I've got a couple of appearances upcoming. I'll be at Take on the World in August, and then the UK conference and the Amsterdam conference in September. And for anybody in the USA that might see this, I'm headed to the Dallas convention in November. So would love to meet anybody that's going to be there, and hope we can chat. So with that, that was pretty much what I wanted to cover. And if there are questions, I'm happy to answer them. I may not know them all. I might have to defer some of them to Scott, the true researcher, but happy to address those.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you for that presentation. You've put a lot of work into that. Whereabouts did you get all your images from?
The moon images, moon landings?
Yeah.
Yeah, most of those are probably a lot of them were on the what NASA put on Flickr, because that's where the high res ones came out, but also from the NASA Apollo journal site. So I can provide links to all of those. In fact, in the presentation, in the notes, you'll see the exact frame in each of the mission, the magazine, and what number the frame was. But they're all available online.
Cool stuff. Cool stuff. Well, we have had a couple of questions already. So the first one was way back from the Adam Meakin. Question: why does an astronaut make a similar level impression into the lunar dust as a lunar module? And I know 1/6 of the gravity don't cut it.
Well, I come at it from a completely different perspective. Having seen what I've seen, and the conclusion I've drawn is that that these were all shot on Earth, and so and sometimes the soil or sand was wet or more moist than it is at other times, and would hold the indentation of the boot better. And you could even see, going frame by frame through some of the magazines, when they're pointing kind of the same direction, you can see how over, like, it was like through the morning or through the day or whatever, you could see that or maybe through night, that the ground was drying and becoming a little bit lighter and stuff. So I think there was just changing conditions. And so to say that it would be exactly the same for every mission, or the same for every astronaut, it just depends on the conditions. Depends on the ambient conditions and the weather. Did it rain last night or not?
Okay, so we have another question. Do you think what you have called the double shadows could in fact be caused by video interlacing?
Sure. Anything is possible. I think what you need to do, in my opinion, would be, you don't take one thing and try to explain it away. You have to look at the whole thing. You have to look at all of the reconciliation problems that come when you examine this evidence. There's too many problems. In my opinion, if these moon landings happened as we were told, we would not find all these anomalies. We wouldn't find all of these problems. I mean, just the simple fact that NASA told us that the astronauts wore two spacesuits, that the inner suit, which was a blue color, was pressurized, and that the white outer suit was not pressurized. It was just kind of an abrasion layer meant to protect them, insulate them, but it was not pressurized. But you have the gloves and the helmet connect only to the outer white suit. You've got a problem there.
Okay, so there's a few people in chat saying that you have number one presentation. There's a few people in chat saying that you're full of shit. So it's just one of them, and it's Globers and Flat Earthers there.
Well, thank you for the feedback. I will file that appropriately.
So from Chris Cruel. So this is a question to me, but I essentially think it's to you. Obviously, you're the guest. So, do you think it is possible you are wrong? Being intellectually honest, what would it take for you to believe the NASA landings happened?
Oh, gosh. What would it take? Well, I think when you adopt a mindset of being skeptical about what the government tells you, then you're going to take a position where you really have to have first-hand evidence. You have to have first-hand proof. For something like this, I mean, I think we all have to agree. There's nobody in chat right now. There's nobody that's listening to this that's ever stepped foot on the moon. So everybody here, everybody listening, everybody asking questions is all taking a position based on faith. That's it. Very simply. Either you believe it because you want to, or that's what you've been told, or you think the facts are there. But the point is that it's a belief system. So I believe the evidence points to the fact that this did not happen on the moon, because if we take what we're told the moon is like, the environment, and what it takes to get there, and we reconcile with what we're told, it doesn't line up. So unfortunately, I would have to go to the moon. I would have to see it for myself. I've seen enough, in my opinion, that this was shot on Earth. I mean, the photos and the video, and what we are seeing, what we are shown, I think was shot right here on Earth. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, so we have a few more questions coming through right now. So, can you have gas pressure without a sealed container?
I would say no.
Okay,
You'd have
so
to have a barrier to, I think, to have significant pressure differentials. You've got to have some sort of barrier there, and then if the barrier is removed, then you're going to have an equalization of pressure. Depends on the size of the container, obviously, too.
Okay, so we have a question from Bob the Science Guy, who will be doing a debate tomorrow on this channel. So stay tuned for that tomorrow at 10 p.m. BST. Sorry, 8:30 p.m. PST tomorrow for this debate with Bob the Science Guy. But he says, question: what is the pressure gradient between an Apollo spacesuit and the surface of the Moon? What is a taut? Question mark. What is the pressure difference between atmospheric P and the Ohio chamber?
Not quite sure what that's asking, but the measurements we're given is the Ohio chamber is they're able to get down to 10 to the negative 6 torr. We're told the surface of the Moon is 10 to the negative 11 torr. So, and then I think if you research the force, if you will, of the the pressure there as it's building, as you're removing the air pressure from a certain from a container, the difference in pressure from what is outside trying to get in, when you go from negative 6 to negative 7, and then you go to negative 8, it's more of an exponential or logarithmic orders of magnitude. It's not linear. So you're getting at least exponentially greater every time you do that. So it would be 100,000 times more potentially between negative 6 to a negative 11. It would be 5 decimal points of lowering the psi, if you want to convert it there. So I believe that they tell us NASA said that the spacesuits were reduced down to 4 or 5 psi or something like that, and they did that because that's the lowest that a human could withstand, I believe, is what we're told. And then outside was 10 to the negative 11. So I think what they've done, and I think that's where the deception lies, is they've tried to reduce the differential between the air pressure inside the suit and the outside the suit to such as low as possible to say, oh, look, you're only 3, 4, 5 psi difference. The problem is understanding that the lack of air pressure outside of that suit, there's nothing pushing against that suit. Virtually nothing. Well, I'd say almost nothing. It would be 0.000002 psi or whatever. Essentially, we could look at it as having no back pressure for the suit there. So even 3, 4, 5 pounds per square inch pushing against the suit, compared to there not being anything on the backside to support that, would fail. But I think once I learned that NASA said that there's 2 spacesuits that these guys were wearing, and only the inner blue one was pressurized, once I saw that the gloves and the helmet were attaching only to the white outer suit, and then they said that wasn't pressurized, and you had hoses and quick connects and things on the white suit that wouldn't hold up even in a low vacuum, you've got some problems.
Okay, so we have a question from Toady. Why would NASA, if faking this, need to have 4 different rovers? Surely a fake would have just one and use it.
Well, I think the reason that there's multiple rovers in one mission is because they were having mechanical problems with them. They were breaking down, and they were using parts to patch these things up. And it may seem pretty insignificant to somebody just scrolling through, but when you spend time looking and seeing that these things were changed, because they had to be, that would tell you that these things were breaking down, and they had to fix these things. And when you see the same issues from 15, 16, and 17, and you see an oil leak in the same axle, the left rear axle, on all, and it's supposed to be 3 different rovers, but it's the same axle, and it's getting worse and worse each mission, you start to see, and again, you put all these puzzle pieces together, you start to see that this is equipment that was just recycled over and over again for each mission, and they had to keep patching it, and that's why it appears that there's different rovers, but there's only one, and they just had to be patchworked together to get it to get it through all the missions.
Okay, so we have a claim here from Globe agent Ron Burgundy. So he says, Ask Paul, does he understand that even a plastic Coca-Cola bottle can stand about 10 times the pressure difference the suit's needed to take? The bottle can take 150 psi.
Yep, that's great. That works here on Earth when there's significant pressure pushing against it. But I would love to see that Coke bottle be put in at 10, even 10 to the -6 torr, and see what happened to it. With there's essentially no back pressure supporting that thing. That works here on Earth. You've got 14.7 psi pushing on the outside of it, supporting that. But when you put that Coke bottle, if you were able to put that Coke bottle to essentially, nothing around it, nothingness, you've got a lot more air trying. That air trying to get out would be significantly stronger. That's my opinion. I would love to see a Coke bottle put in that NASA chamber and then drop that thing to 10 to the -6 torr and see what happens to that little plastic container.
It's an interesting line of thought, that, because it's something that I'm actually looking into myself, actually. So obviously the pressure on the outside must have an effect from the pressure pushing out from the inside. So if you've got, I don't know, let's say you got 6 psi holding something on the outside, and then you change it put it in at 0.15 pressure on the outside, it has to expand. It simply has to expand because it has pressure on the outside containing it. So I understand where you're coming from there.
Yeah, it's the equilibrium. The reason we have 14.7 at sea level, 14.7 psi pushing all around us as we live in what I believe is a contained system. But we also have the same back pressure. We have 14.7 psi pushing out, so we've got this perfect state of equilibrium. But as you lower one of those and change those, significant things happen once they get out of balance. And if you were to able to drop, the outside of a container to 0.000000002 psi, which is what we're told, space is, above the Kármán line, 62 miles, 100 kilometers, where it starts getting 10 to the -3, 10 to the -4 torr, TORR, which is named after a guy, has to do with millimeters of mercury, which is, so I think 786 or 768. I get my numbers switched every once in a while, but millimeters of mercury at sea level. So basically sea level would be 768 torr, but you're talking about, going into 0.0000001, like 11 zeros or 10 zeros in front of that one on the surface of the moon. Between that and 768 torr, that's quite a difference.
Yeah.
And that's something that needs to be taken into consideration when you examine this stuff.
We have a specific question for you. Does Paul have the blueprint of the lunar module, and if so, does he know the measurements of the hatch?
I would have to look it up online, but do I know the measurements offhand? No.
Okay, cool.
If there's something significant there, I've heard people say this, and I haven't looked into it myself. I've heard people say that that the size of the hatch that is on display in museums, the lunar modules that sit in museums, that if you were to measure the hatch, that you would find that the spacesuit astronaut fully donning a spacesuit with their personal life support system wouldn't be able to fit through there. I've heard that, but I've not looked into it.
Okay, so we have a question from GPS. So this is slightly off topic, but can you ask Paul if he's willing to have people discuss this topic on his YouTube page without deleting comments that he doesn't agree with?
Somebody's claiming I delete stuff. I get this all the time. You deleted this or deleted that. I'm very clear on my YouTube channel. If you are insulting, if I see it, now I don't have time to go through all my comments, but if I see you insulting, using bad language, just being, just not showing any class, I have the right to remove it. If somebody there is claiming that their arguments aren't being heard, well then start a YouTube channel, upload your video, and get your voice out there. Okay. I kind of take offense to that over time. People are like, hey, you said this or you said that. Well, this is my platform and this is my channel, and I do whatever Google allows me to do on it. If other people have other opinions, well, they have every right to make a video and put theirs out there as well. But no, you'll see plenty of dissent. You'll see plenty of arguments against the stuff that I put out there over the years. If somebody's saying that I delete anything that's against my beliefs, then they haven't read through all of the comments yet, and I see them all the time. I do delete ones when somebody is using bad language and insulting or just trying to cause trouble. Then I delete it. If somebody feels like I deleted something and it was unfair that I did that, then send me an email and I'll take a look at it. And if I agree, then I'll let you put the comment on there. How's that?
Cool, right. We've had a super chat from Jennifer Winterburn saying, "Great work, Ranty." Thank you very much. That's the first super chat I've had in about a week.
Thanks, Jennifer.
First super chat in a week, so thank you very much. I do appreciate it, honestly. I really do.
Hey, Randy, can I just say one thing?
Of course you can.
I just want to say to the people that are listening that think the moon landings happened and they think this is all a bunch of garbage, you know what? That's great. I'm not here. I'm not trying to convince anybody by just showing this that hey, this is, these were faked. All I want to get people to do, my whole goal is that people will go, there might be something here. I want to learn more, and I encourage people just to go to the videos on my website or on my YouTube channel and click the links and look for yourself. I just want people to question things and not just take what the government tells them at pure face value and assume that they have your best interests. That's really what it's all about. And if you think the moon landings happened and you're sure of it, well then great, hats off to you. That's fine. We can definitely coexist. I have a different opinion, and that's what I put on my channel. And if you don't like that, then that's fine. Just I asked if you're going to comment to be respectful, and that's pretty much it. So I just wanted to get that out there, that I don't hate anybody that thinks the moon landings happened. I just have a different opinion, and I show on my channel why I have that opinion. Yeah.
And to be fair, I mean, that's literally going to be... That was the question I was just about to ask. However, I did notice that there was an insulting remark towards you at the same time from Skyfly Briar. I suppose you've come across that dude before. But again, the question was basically, is Paul on the plane trying to debunk the moon landings to enforce his religious belief in a flat Earth? And I think you just answered that, right, basically.
Yeah, I mean, do I think there's a correlation there with the deception about the shape of the world? Yes, but are these videos that I've made about the moon landings and the images we've gone through today, is that evidence for the shape of the world? No. I'm focused on one topic here, and that is there's a claim that NASA sent 6 men 250,000 miles away on a rock that's orbiting the Earth. That's the claim. I am just presenting evidence here that says that might not be true. That's it.
Okay, so again, this is off topic, so you don't really have to answer this. But from Brenda Von Assen, please ask him why the formula for pressure does not mention container anywhere.
The formula for pressure does not mention container.
Yeah.
That's a physics question.
To be fair, it's not about the moon landings, is it? So it really is diversifying from the topic at hand. So,
well, that's a good question for your physics professor. Somebody that's going to be for the vacuum experts and things like that. It kind of makes me think of it. One of the videos that we did recently, which was the vacuum of space, and it showed the tanker cars, the railroad cars, the tanker cars, being the air pressure being reduced inside down to like 3 or 4 psi, and then collapsing. These solid steel structures collapsing at 3 or 4 psi. What I was going to say is these on the subject of the vacuum and the ability or the amount of force, is I reached out to a company that's lifting thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds, many, hundreds of tons of pipe, and they're using it with vacuums, just showing how much if you just reduce the air, and they only got up to like 80-85% of a vacuum, not even 99%, like 10 to the negative 11 torr would be, in our understanding. Even just getting to 80-85% of a vacuum, and the size of the container was just getting a little bit bigger to be able to do that, to be able to lift all of this weight, shows the power of that force that you can create just by lowering the air pressure just a little bit. So, if people are thinking that a Coke bottle, or these vacuum pipe lifters, that the spacesuit and the lunar module are stronger than those things, I really don't understand how somebody can reconcile that in their mind, because it just doesn't add up to me.
Shout out to Rob Keane again for the super chat. Thank you very much. Very appreciated. Definitely. We have Gem Panda. Now, I don't know if you know, Gem Panda likes his moon landings. He actually did a presentation on this show. It was the first ever presentation, actually, about the moon landings being real, or there was information out there that would suggest that the moon landing was real. Anyway, so we have a more of a statement, I think. He says, 2 repairs to the rover fenders were very well documented. Why did Paul say that there is no mention of these repairs?
Well, to be fair, I didn't say that there was no repairs to the fender. I said that there appears to be, based on the, and I apologize if that's how it was taken. The pictures indicate that there were problems with steering. There were, the changing of the tire tracks, and things like that. And you'll see in the photos, you can see how some of the other things that were changed, what appeared to be changed in the photos, weren't mentioned. But yes, you can see in one of the photos they strapped like a piece of cardboard or something to those, because the fender had broken, and so the moon dust was being kicked up right like onto the astronauts, and so they had to repair that. That was well documented. But I would ask that the person that sees that is trying to kind of explain some of this away, I would ask why out of all of the 3 missions and the 3 different rovers, while in one photo we have one different fender, and then even in the same mission we've got the fenders all being identical except for that one photo. They're just some anomalies there that need to be addressed, in my opinion.
Okay. From Toady, so he'd like to see, if it's possible, the script again, so that you can identify the images. So the full thing says, repeat, could the presenter please share his script or presentation so we can identify the images, please? So I think you've already said that you will make a PowerPoint available. Will you be able to send me the link so that I can put it into the description afterwards, so people can download it? Yep,
happy to do that.
Perfect.
Yeah, not all of the images. I don't know if all of the images have the exact on there, but again, all of these images have been in at one time or another, been in previous videos, and you can refer to the mission and the magazine where to find those. So they're all able to be found online.
Okay, so Bob the Science Guy is asking again, do you know what a torr is? TORR.
Yeah, I think we talked about that. It's a measurement. It's a metric for pressure.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a gentleman's name, I believe. It was named after a person, and I don't have it in front of me. I remember reading it one time, the first time I was reading about torr. But it's equivalent to, I believe, millimeters of mercury. So I just don't recall off the top of my head, but it's a unit of measurement. And when we get into real low pressure, they use torr, because if it's I guess if you use PSI or some of the other ones, then you've got a lot more digits. So, but torr is what we're told is what above the Kármán line is when you get so many miles away from Earth. I think deep space, we're told, is 1 times 10 to the negative 17 torr. So if you can go online to a conversion calculator and look what that equates to in PSI or millimeters of mercury or kilopascals, all the different metrics.
Okay, I'm just going to stop you there with that line of questioning, because essentially anybody can look up what torr is, and I feel that these are sort of like trick questions to try and just test whether or not you actually know a particular calculations, things that people can actually perhaps go back and try and go over your presentation and say, oh, we got this wrong, or we didn't understand that, rather than addressing the actual presentation. And I've said it to other people in the past, when they get a question like this, I do feel that these are things that people can just click and research it dead easy. It'd be probably the first thing that pops up. So asking you to explain it, it seems like they're trying to trick you into a question. So
sure. And again, if somebody, I would just ask them to, the people that are, that are doing that, the information's all available there. And there's, you can look at the photos and you can see something totally different. For people that want to believe that the moon landings happen, if you want them to happen, when you look at the photos, you probably won't be able to see this stuff. It's only if you're going to be open-minded, if you're going to go, really, kind of set the preconceived notions out and just try and look, just really objectively, the photos are going to be able to see stuff. We bring our preconceived notions into everything. So if you wanted the moon landings to happen, then I'm sure you can find a way to explain away everything that I've said today, and that's fine. That's up to you. I'm not. That's not the type of person I'm talking to today. I'm looking for the one that's open-minded, that is willing to maybe take a different point of view, and then go down that line of thinking and see where it goes. It's just as simple as that.
Okie dokie. So like I say, I mean, because Bob was the guy that asked the question, and I think Bob had a similar question thrown at him, or I think it was Bob anyway, and I said the same thing to him, basically. Don't answer it, because it's literally something that you can just research, and it seems like they're trying to trip you up. So
just Google it.
So moving on, I'm looking for. Right, okay. So Ranty says, Skype immediately, please. Okay. Let me just check what this Skype immediately, please is all about. Just 1 second there, Paul.
I've got about 10 minutes. Just letting you know, I've got about 10 minutes before I got to jump into a meeting here for work.
Right, okay. No worries. Just let me see.
Most of the time. We're still in the middle of the workday here in the States, especially on the West Coast.
Right. Hang on. I don't know why Tony wants me to present this, but I'm really just looking for questions from the chat rather than a presentation right now. If you want to go live in a minute after this, Tony, it's fine. If you want to present it afterwards, that's fine. So, question from F.E. Mowry. Paul, what do you think about the rovers kicking up the dust in the videos? Why didn't the dust keep rising up due to the moon's gravity being 1/6 of the Earth?
I've kind of the same conclusion that a lot of people have, that it appears maybe the video was slowed down by half or some percentage, just to make it kind of look like, make it look different than Earth. Obviously, it couldn't look the same as Earth, so I believe it was shot here on Earth. The photographs were, the videos were shot here on Earth. So if they did not change the speed, then it had to be different. It had to seem like a different environment, because it was not supposed to be here on Earth. But I know where that question is coming from. If we could simulate 1/6 gravity here on Earth and try to duplicate some of this stuff, we could kind of see what it should look like. Did it look the same? Did it not? There was obviously some manipulations going on in my mind when it comes to that sort of thing. So I don't know really how to answer that. I think that it was shot here on Earth. I guess that's where I'm coming from.
Okay, so we've had another question asking for the documents that you've presented today. So that's cool. Again, did you actually see Jen Panda's presentation, or have you not had a chance to watch that yet?
I have not.
Okay, cool. I'm trying to catch up because there's so many questions. I'm trying to read stuff that I can get within the next 10 minutes for you. So again, more images. She Who Dares, thank you for the super chat. Really do appreciate it. And Toady, thank you very much. Great presentation and civil manner, very good. Right, let's see. Question. Do you think you're open-minded if the only way you could be convinced is to actually go to the moon?
Well, to the person, I would say the person that asked that question, that's up to them. That's up to them if I'm open-minded or not.
Right, so I'm just waiting for a couple more questions to come through. If nothing comes through in the next 30 seconds, I probably have missed a bunch of questions because I was holding it on pause, with the questions, and then there's like 100 different messages since, so I probably have missed questions, but I'll give it another 2 questions, and then if you want to round up, Paul, is that all right with you?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks again for the opportunity. It was fun.
No, it was a pleasure having you. Right, I'm not seeing any more questions. Paul, would you like to round out then?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, thanks everybody for sticking around, whichever side of the fence you're on. I hope that there were some of you listening that maybe were willing to question things, and maybe this has given you a little bit of fire in your belly to embark on this journey and to look a little bit deeper into it. I think the key to this whole thing is really understanding the spacesuit, which was the last video that we did, and understanding how the spacesuit would have to work and function in this environment, and learning how it was made, and seeing the pictures that we were given and how it performed. Because I think that is one of the biggest keys here, and the biggest problems that NASA has to overcome is that spacesuit. There's a reason that we don't see that spacesuit used in those big vacuum chambers, and proving that, and allowing somebody to get in there and to show that thing, because I don't think those spacesuits work. But anyway, hopefully that gave some seeds of doubt into people that weren't questioning the moon landings. Hopefully they have. And I just appreciated everybody's time and listening. And if they'd like to learn more about some of the work that Scott Henderson and his research, and what we've produced on my YouTube channel and my website, please go to fakingspace.net. And if you'd like to get in touch with me directly, you can shoot me an email at paul@paulintheplane.com. And as I mentioned, I will provide this PowerPoint presentation. I'll put it on my OneDrive with the link so anybody can download it and check this stuff out for themselves.
Okay, so just one last question. Were the Soviets in on it?
In my opinion, yes. Yes, I think there was an understanding that they would be the first ones to get to space, with Sputnik and their cosmonauts and that sort of thing. But with the film industry, Hollywood, and the USA being a little bit more advanced when it comes to film productions, I think it was decided that they would do that. And you're going to see people say, well, if the Russians knew, they would have blown the whistle. Not if the U.S. and the Russia are in bed together. I mean, it's the same people that are running this world. And banks run the governments, okay? And the governments then run the people. So, you go high enough, and you realize, in my opinion, that this was all part of the act, and it was meant to reinforce the heliocentric model. I think that's what it was for, because for 500 years we were thinking that the Earth was a spinning ball flying through space, and we had to get far enough away to prove that to everybody. And so that's why they had to do what they did. And whether you think that they did it for that reason or not, the point is if we didn't go to the moon, then we have never we've never seen the entire Earth. A human has never seen the entire Earth with their 2 eyes if we don't have the moon mission. So I think it's key for people to really look into this subject.
Well, thank you very much, Paul. I appreciate you stopping by. I appreciate you stopping by in the middle of the day too to do this presentation. And yeah, I mean, we'll have a chat maybe tomorrow if you're around. People can find you tomorrow as well, can't they? You've got a show tomorrow?
Yep, tomorrow night, Truth Frequency Radio. I'll be on at 5 o'clock Pacific, and 8 o'clock Eastern U.S. time, 1 a.m. GMT, but it's going to be a 4-hour marathon. We've got my show with Roxanne, and then Mark Sargent and Karen B are going to be on our show, and then we're going to continue right on into Strange World, which is the next show, and we'll continue on that. So it's going to be 4 hours of Flat Earth live talk radio. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much. I think I'll end the Skype call with you now, and I'll give you a bell later. All right, Paul?
Great. Thanks again, Ranty, and thanks everybody for listening. Appreciate you. Take care.
Cheers. Bye-bye. So that was Paul on the plane, and that was round table 17, the simulated moon missions. Tomorrow we have Bob the Science Guy, and he's going to be doing a debate with Brian, and essentially this is going to be a debate on whether or not there's any Earth rotation. So the questions have been handed out to each other, so they each have the questions from the opponent, so they've got plenty of time to prepare for the answers, and this will be going ahead tomorrow, 8:30 p.m. 8:30 p.m. BST, that's London time. So what time are we now? So for instance, it is almost 11:30 at night. So in just 21 hours, that will be going ahead tomorrow. So don't forget to stop by and see that. Thank you for the super chats. I've had 4 super chats today, which has been rather surprising, really, because I thought nobody really cared about the show. So it was it was very nice to actually see people actually making the effort there to support the show. So thank you very much. Effie Mowry, awesome interview. Thank you very much. Many blessings from Paul. You're a class act. Another great presentation. That was from Flat Out Faith, and from Constance Bruins. Excellent hosting. And I love our brother, the guest, very much. Yes, Paul is a very good researcher. Right, well, thank you very much, guys. Thank you for stopping by, and hopefully I will see you all tomorrow. And that will end episode 17, the simulated moon missions with Paul on the plane.